He said he was working late. I believed him, until I walked into his apartment and found her earrings on the nightstand. That moment shattered something inside me. I cried until I couldn't breathe, screamed until my voice was gone. It wasn't just about losing him, it was losing the version of me that believed love was safe. But this isn't just a story about pain. It's a story about rebuilding. About learning to trust again, even when every voice inside you says don't. I want to take you on that journey. Not because it was easy, but because it was real. Before I dive into my truth, I want to say thank you. To everyone listening, watching, your support, your comments, your likes, your encouragement, it's the reason I find the courage to tell my story, honestly and unfiltered. Your presence gives my pain a purpose. And for that, I am deeply grateful. There's a sound I'll never forget. The click of Michael's apartment door. The slow creak as it opened. And the silence that followed, too still, too clean. I had brought takeout and a bottle of wine, thinking I'd surprise him. We hadn't spent much time together that week because he said work was crazy. I believed him. That's the thing with trust, it doesn't break gradually. It shatters. When I walked into his bedroom and saw a pair of gold hoop earrings that weren't mine on his nightstand, I stopped breathing. I knew those weren't mine. I knew what that meant. He came out of the bathroom in a towel, shocked to see me. She was still in the shower. I didn't wait for excuses. I dropped the food, walked out, and cried all the way home. That night changed me. My name is Emily Sanders, and this is my story. I live in Chicago. I work in marketing. I love late-night drives, acoustic music, and the smell of coffee in the morning. I used to love love, until it betrayed me. Michael and I dated for 4 years. We had built dreams together, marriage, kids, moving to a little house just outside the city. I believed him when he said I was his forever. But forever ended with an affair. I thought I'd never recover. I became quiet. Guarded. Suspicious of happiness, like it was too good to last. That's the version of me Daniel met. Daniel came into my life unexpectedly. He wasn't flashy like Michael. He was calm. Steady. Kind. A software engineer with a dorky laugh and eyes that made me feel safe, for a moment. We met at a mutual friend's game night. He liked that I always had something sarcastic to say. I liked that he listened more than he spoke. We dated for almost a year before he proposed. Yes, I said yes. But I wasn't ready. Not fully. At first, things were great. Daniel is patient, respectful, the kind of man who doesn't raise his voice even when he's frustrated. He'd bring me flowers on Tuesdays just because and leave sweet notes in my lunch bag. But I couldn't believe it was real. I started watching everything he did. If he smiled too long at a female coworker, I'd freeze. If his phone rang and a woman's name popped up, my heart would race. I'd accuse. I'd cry. I'd apologize, and then do it again. One time, I found a message from his work colleague, Nina. It was just about a project. But I didn't see logic. I saw betrayal. I smashed his phone. Another time, I showed up unannounced at his job when he mentioned he'd be working late. I wanted to see for myself. He was shocked, embarrassed, but didn't yell. Just took me outside and asked, "Emily, is this who you want to be?" I didn't answer. I couldn't. My friends started pulling away. Even my mom suggested I might need help. But I kept saying, I'm just protecting myself. The truth? I was a prisoner of my past. I was still bleeding from wounds I never stitched. And it was hurting the only man who truly loved me. Daniel sat me down one night, after another argument. I had accused him of flirting with a waitress at dinner. I cried all the way home. I thought he'd leave. But instead, he sat on the edge of the bed, looked me in the eyes, and said, "Emily, I'm not him." I looked away. He continued, "You keep punishing me for what he did. And I get it, I really do. But we can't build a life if you're constantly waiting for me to fail you. I broke down. For the first time, I saw the hurt in his eyes. I wasn't just hurting myself. I was damaging us. That night, he gently suggested counseling. Not because I was crazy, but because I deserved peace. At first, I refused. I told myself I was strong, that I didn't need therapy. But the truth? I was tired. Tired of being scared. Tired of reacting. Tired of ruining every good thing before it could grow. So I called. That's how I met Karen. She was in her late 40s, warm brown hair pulled into a loose bun, with the kind of calm voice that made you want to cry. I told her everything, from the earrings on Michael's nightstand to the destroyed phone in Daniel's hands. She didn't judge. She listened. And then she said something I'll never forget. Emily, your past pain is valid. But it's not a map for your future. Over the next few sessions, we started unpacking my triggers. I realized how much of my behavior wasn't about Daniel, it was about fear. Fear of being left. Fear of looking stupid again. Fear of loving someone more than they loved me. Karen helped me understand that my reactions were protective, but destructive. That jealousy, while normal in small doses, can become toxic when it runs unchecked. She gave me tools. Breathing techniques. Reframing questions. Journaling exercises. And most importantly, she helped me find myself again, the part of me that existed before betrayal. Meanwhile, Daniel never stopped showing up. He'd drive me to therapy when I felt too anxious. He bought me a new journal with "You Are Enough" engraved on the cover. He never said, "Hurry up and heal." He said, "I'm right here." That was love. I'm not going to lie and say everything changed overnight. It didn't. There were still days I flinched when his phone buzzed. Still moments I doubted. But now, I had tools. I had awareness. I had a partner who was patient, but firm about boundaries. We started doing check-ins every week. Honest talks. No phones. Just us, face to face. Sometimes we laughed. Sometimes I cried. But each time, it brought us closer. One day, I watched him talking to Nina at his office during a visit. She smiled. He smiled back. And you know what? I didn't panic. I didn't freeze. I didn't accuse. I just smiled, and kept walking. Because for the first time in a long time, I knew, not just hoped, that I could trust him. Healing doesn't come with a timeline. Some people think once you meet someone new, you're supposed to be over your past. That love is a clean slate. But trauma doesn't work like that. It lingers. It creeps into new places and taints what could have been beautiful, unless you fight for your peace. Therapy wasn't easy for me. I'd sit across from Karen, arms folded, voice shaking, trying to explain feelings I didn't even fully understand. One session, she asked me a question that haunted me for days. What would trust look like if you weren't afraid? I couldn't answer. Not at first. Because I had never seen trust without fear. In my world, love was a gamble. A risk. Something you gave and hoped wouldn't be shattered. But over time, I started learning the difference between fear and facts. Fear said, he'll cheat like Michael did. Facts said, Daniel has never lied to me. Fear said, he's texting another woman. Facts said, he told you earlier it was Nina asking about tomorrow's meeting. Fear said, if I don't control the situation, I'll get hurt. Facts said, control is not the same as safety. Karen taught me how to pause. Before reacting, I had to breathe, 10 seconds, eyes closed, feet on the ground. Then I'd ask myself, is this reaction based on now, or on then? That pause saved me. It saved us. Meanwhile, Daniel kept being the rock I didn't know I needed. He'd leave notes around the house saying things like, I trust us. He installed a whiteboard in the kitchen for us to write our thoughts on, no judgment. He celebrated my little wins, like the day I let him go out for a team dinner without texting every hour. One night, I found a letter in my pillowcase. It read, "I know you're scared. But I'm not here to take advantage of that. I'm here to hold your hand through it. Because I'm not leaving, not when it's hard. Not when you're healing. I'm staying because I love all of you, even the parts still learning to breathe again." I cried myself to sleep that night, but for the first time, it wasn't from pain. It was from being seen. As therapy progressed, I started to recognize my triggers. Seeing him with women. Seeing his phone light up. Being excluded from work conversations. Hearing the words "I'm busy." Each of those moments used to spiral me. But now I was armed with tools. I started talking to myself the way I imagined Karen would. This is not the past. Daniel is not Michael. You're not the same woman anymore. One of the biggest breakthroughs came during a session where Karen asked me to write a letter, not to Daniel, not to Michael, but to myself. To the version of me who got hurt. Who stayed. Who cried in secret. Who blamed herself for someone else's betrayal. Here's what part of that letter said. Dear Emily, I forgive you for not knowing better. For loving too deeply. For trusting someone who wasn't worthy. You didn't fail. You just believed. And that's not a weakness, that's the part of you that still hopes. Don't lose her. Just protect her better. I folded that letter and tucked it in my wallet. Because I needed my own permission to heal. I also started rebuilding my relationship with other women, especially Nina. Yes, the woman I once saw as a threat. One day, Daniel invited her and a few coworkers over for dinner. I almost canceled. But Karen encouraged me to face my fears. That night, I watched Nina interact with us. She was kind. Respectful. Engaged. There was no hidden energy, no side glances. Just another woman trying to build her career. After dinner, she pulled me aside and said something that struck me. I know what it's like to have your heart broken. I've been there. And I think you and Daniel are really lucky to have each other. She wasn't the enemy. My pain was. Slowly, the walls came down. I started smiling again, really smiling. Laughing without holding back. Sleeping through the night without checking his messages. One Saturday morning, Daniel and I sat on our tiny apartment balcony, sipping coffee. He looked at me and said, "You seem lighter." And I realized. I was. Not because the fear was gone completely. But because I had learned to live without letting it drive me. We postponed our wedding at one point. Not because we were unsure, but because we wanted to do it right. I wanted to walk down that aisle with a heart open, not guarded. When we finally did get married, I didn't cry at the vows. I cried when I danced with him at the reception and realized. I was finally free. To anyone listening or reading this. If you've ever been betrayed, I see you. If you've ever felt crazy for reacting, I understand. And if you've ever thought, maybe I'll never trust again, I promise, you can. Not every man is the one who hurt you. Not every love is a lie. But before you give someone else your trust, give yourself your healing. That's where it starts. Thank you, truly, to every single one of you who's followed me through this journey. Your likes, your comments, your messages, they've helped me stay honest. Vulnerability isn't weakness. It's strength. And every time I see someone say, "This helped me," it reminds me why I started sharing in the first place. So please, keep supporting, keep listening, keep healing.